Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we go, everybody. Mark Mancini is having technical difficulties. This is Peter J. Ray opening tonight's show, American Sports History, out of Cleveland, Ohio, and on the Mark Mancini Sports Podcast Network. And I have a YouTube channel. I'm doing well. I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. Ray. I'm on Facebook if you want to send me a friend request. And tonight we have back for the second time former MLB player from 1961 to 1975 with the Cleveland Indians, San Francisco Giants, New York Yankees, and Pittsburgh Pirates. He won 141 games. He has one of the best strikeouts per 9 innings, close to 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, one of the best all time. And one of the best starting pitchers in Major League Baseball in the late second half of the 1960s into the 1970s. And then he developed alcoholism, recovered, and had a wonderful career helping people overcome alcoholism. He's got a book coming out. People are excited. March 9th, The Saga of Sudden Sam, The Rise, Fall, and Redemption of Sam McDowell, co-author with Marty Gitlin, and that's coming. That's getting close. Only about 2 weeks from now. So, welcome to the show, Mr. Sam McDowell.
Thank you. Good to be here, Peter.
We have Earl from Marlborough, Massachusetts says, "Hi, fellas, lifelong Indians fan. Sam, it's a travesty to change that name. Any thoughts?"
Yeah, I agree. It was terrible to change it. And to this day, I've talked to so many people, I still don't have a reason why it was changed. I'm talking about a valid reason, other than politics.
Yeah, it's every time I hear Cleveland Guardians, it's like a knife in my heart, and I'm kind of dreading the start of the season hearing that name. It's just because it's anyway. So this is something that has happened, something difficult, but hopefully still hope they change it back to the Indians. Mark Heffernan says hi from Fresno, California. Hi, Mark. Now, last time I felt like I was very interested in hearing your thoughts on your teammates, and I felt like we were going through too fast. And so I'd like to go back to the beginning, 1961, the first year you played in Major League Baseball, and go through some of these teammates one by one. Starting with John Romano. What are your memories of John Romano?
Yep, he was one of the catchers. Him and Velmy Thomas, my first year that I was there in the big leagues. In fact, it was Velmy Thomas that was my catcher in my first game I pitched in the major leagues that year in 1961.
We have a comment from a guy who says he grew up with Dennis Eckersley and Rick Manning, the blood-stained Red Tops. And that's after you left Cleveland. Another player from early on, Vic Power. What are your memories of Vic Power?
Vic was probably one of the funniest guys that I ever knew back in the day. Unbelievable defensive player, and the weirdest batting stance and batting swing. He never was still. Everything was always moving with him. And the best thing I could say or I should say the thing I remember the most was one day in spring training, I had such a pickoff, and I had warned Vic Power ahead of time that when there was a guy on first base, don't be alarmed if I pick him off. And he gave me that funny laugh of his, "You just pitch, Sam. You just pitch. I'll take care. Okay. The very first time I went to pick a guy off, I hit him in the chest.
Well, Power was playing first.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Woody Held.
Woody Held, one of the strongest arms I've ever seen of any infielder, next to probably Max Alvis. I mean, he was throwing guys out at first base, fielding a ball maybe 30 yards deep out into the outfield in the holes, and he'd still turn and fire them out. Great guy, great country boy. Lived in Wyoming all his life. was just a great all-around ball player.
Tito Francona.
Tito, I would say probably one of the smartest hitters I ever knew. Although he did have quite a few home runs, he never did hit for power per se, but he was one of those line drive hitters, and you couldn't get him out. You just couldn't get him out. And the opposition really, he pestered the daylights out of them.
Jimmy Pearsall.
My first roommate in Major League Baseball. I showed up at spring training in 1961, and I go check in at the hotel, go to my room, and there's clothes and suitcase there, but nobody was there. So I'm just sitting watching television on the bed, and in walks Jimmy Pearsall, and the first thing he says to me is, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Sam McDowell, and I'm told that you're my roommate." He said, "Oh, no, you're not." He says, "I don't room with any rookie." And he turns around, leaves, and goes out, and goes and gets another room by himself. And so for the 2.5, 3 weeks that I was there in Tucson, before they sent me to the minor leagues in Daytona Beach, Florida, I had a room all by myself.
Were you ever around when he did these antics in the field?
Yes and no. Obviously, I wasn't around for all of them. But to me, I thought most of them was because he was just a great actor. And every now and then we used to tease him about being a great actor. And he would always say, if you had 12 kids, you'd be a good actor, too, to make money.
Okay.
But I was pitching against him when he got traded to Washington Senators. And I was pitching a game in JFK Stadium. And you might remember this was the day that he went out to center field, climbed the fence, and sat up there and wouldn't come down. And
okay.
The reason for that was he was embarrassed because I threw a fastball at him, and it was, he thought, ball 4. It really wasn't. It was ball 3. He started down first base, and the umpires had to call him back. And he came back, and I proceeded to strike him out. And that really upset him, and he was the third out of that inning. And when we're walking off the field, he's running out to center field, climbs the fence, and sits up there.
Ken Aspromonte, later Indians manager, years later.
Yeah, I didn't get to know Ken very well. He was only with the Indians there, I'm going to say probably that 1 year. I'm not really sure of his record. I only knew him when he was there with the Indians that 1 year. And I would say there was nothing really significant other than that. He was just I'm going to say, a pretty good ball player in his own right, but nothing spectacular.
Jim Mudcat Grant.
Jim Mudcat Grant was a promoter. I mean, he promoted Jim Mudcat Grant in everything. In the wintertime, he had a group of singers. He could sing. He had Mudcat Grant and the kittens, and he went around the country making money singing and doing a pretty good job. A radio announcer. He was a color man for different sports shows. I mean, he did it all. He was involved with everything. Great promoter. I also considered him to be a pretty doggone good pitcher. Obviously, when I got traded to Minnesota and he started winning those 20-game seasons, was a pretty good guy. We actually were pretty good friends. In fact, we used to kind of hang out a little bit together. The most famous story of all was the first time he ever introduced me to collard greens and black-eyed peas. We went to a black restaurant in Harlem for dinner, and that's the first time I ever had black-eyed peas and collard greens and so on, and kind of liked them. On one Saturday afternoon game in New York, we were finished, and they asked me and Gary Bell if we wanted to go see Aretha Franklin, and we said yes. So we went down to that famous theater in Harlem, and what was so funny was back then you could joke about it, but the lights were out, and it was dark because we were late coming from the stadium. But we went in, sat down, and sat at our seats and saw a great concert by Aretha Franklin. Then when it was all over with, all the lights come on. And you look around, me and Gary Bell are the only two white boys in that whole stadium, or in that whole theater. And Mudcat Grant kept joking and saying, I don't know you guys. I don't know who you are. And he tried to get away from us. And he wasn't going to get away from us.
Okay. Yeah, I remember listening to him on the radio. He said, he got a letter from, it was from Bucyrus, Ohio. He said, I got a letter from Bucharest, Ohio here. That was a funny one my dad enjoyed. Jim Perry.
Jim used to always tell us that he had all the talent in the family between him and Gaylord. Jim was a pretty good classic guy, pretty good pitcher, basically just a fastball and a slider, but he had pretty doggone good control and very seldom ever threw that ball above the knees. And, of course, he got traded, too, and went on to the Twins and won 20 games there. In fact, the year that I got the Pitcher of the Year award, from my fellow peers would vote on that for sporting news. He got the Cy Young that year.
Okay, moving on to 1962, Tommy Agee.
Tommy could go get a ball anywhere you hit in the outfield. I don't care where it was. He covered left field, right field, center field, deep shortstop, deep second. He was just unbelievable being able to go get a ball.
Yeah, and then he became famous. Big catch in the '69 series with the Mets.
Yep.
That's Pedro Ramos.
Pedro Ramos. I'm still in contact with him periodically. He'll send me Facebook messages back and forth. He was amazing. He really couldn't throw the ball that hard, but he had all kind of trick pitches and what have you, and so on. On one of the days we were in, he loved to dress up in cowboy clothes all the time. Still does, by the way, even though he lives in, I believe it's Nicaragua. But anyhow, we come home from playing in Mesa against the Chicago Cubs, get back to the clubhouse, drop all of our equipment and everything, and I needed a ride back to the hotel, and he was going to give me a ride back to the hotel. He rented a convertible every year. He loved a convertible. And so he puts down the convertible top, and as we're riding home, he leans over and pulls out a gun out of the glove compartment. And while we're driving home, he's shooting out the streetlights on our way home.
Oh, boy. And were there any consequences?
Actually, no, what surprised me, but in Tucson, you were allowed to carry a gun. You didn't have to have a permit or anything. You could wear it with you or whatever.
Gary Bell.
Oh, Gary Bell, ding dong. Just talked to him about a month ago. He lives now in Wickenburg, Arizona. One of the funniest guys, I think, ever in baseball. Pretty good pitcher until the whole new Cleveland Indian regime of pitchers came up, meaning Louis Tiant, Steve Hargan, myself, Sonny Siebert, which kind of relegated him to the bullpen as a long reliever And then, of course, they traded him on to Boston, where he was able to be in a World Series and so on. But he was a pretty good pitcher. He had some pretty good stuff.
Barry Latman.
Barry Latman. That's an old name from the past. Barry had the whitest shoulders of any human being on this earth. It was unbelievable. But it was so funny. The Indians continually wanted him to lose weight. And I remember going out to dinner one night with him and Gary Bell, and everybody would get on his case because he'd have a huge T-bone, 2 or 3 baked potatoes, have 2 or 3 desserts, and then he would order, before he'd leave, he'd order a cup of coffee, and he'd always ask for some artificial sweetener. like that's going to do the job.
Mitch from Spokane, Washington says Nolan Ryan at age 63 can throw at 85 miles an hour. Sam, I imagine you can throw close to that as well.
Actually, I can get it up there about 8 or 9 miles an hour.
Okay.
At 80 years old, I got trouble picking my nose.
Okay. Frank Funk.
Frank Funk, during batting practice, he used to take balls that were hitting the outfield. As you know, pitchers had to always go out and catch fly balls while batting practice was going on. And Frank had unique talent of picking off pigeons. And he'd catch a fly ball out there, and as you know, in Cleveland Stadium, during batting practice, the pigeons would come in and land on the field. And he'd pick them off with a baseball, one after another. It's not like the modern days where I guess some organization or group would have gotten on his case.
Yeah, like the time Dave Winfield got arrested for accidentally hitting a pigeon during a game years later. Moving on to 1963, Bertie Tebbetts, your manager, the manager.
Yep, old Bertie. Well, there's a couple secrets in the book that I'm not going to discuss right now because obviously I would like the people to buy my book. But there's quite a few stories in there about Bertie Tebbetts, and a couple of them, I promise you, that the people will really love to read about, and it would explain a lot of problems, a lot of situations that went on during my career at that time.
Joe Askew, the immortal Cuban.
Talked with him 3 days ago. The immortal Cuban lives in Kansas City, Kansas. Doing great, doing good. Just a great all-around guy. He had a unique ability that he could catch anything you threw at him and you didn't even have to tell him what was coming. In fact, in many games, because I had that, I used to always call my own game where if I touched the top of my shoulders or my chest, it was plus. Anything below my belt was a minus. And whatever he put down, then we would add or subtract. And I did it so fast sometimes, he had no idea what was coming. But he caught it. And with me throwing 103 miles an hour, he amazed me over and over and over.
Larry Brown.
Larry Brown, one of the nice guys, good shortstop. I would say kind of an average guy, but a pretty classy guy.
Max Elvis.
Max Elvis. I don't think Max Elvis ever got his just due. I mean, if you look at his statistics year in and year out, his statistics compared with any of your great third basemen like Brooks Robinson. I'm not saying he was the Brooks Robinson, Well, if you take a look at his stats and compare him with Brooksy, the difference is Brooksy was smooth. Max Alvis was constantly taking ground line shots off his chest or off his chin or something. He would stop the ball one way or another and throw the guy out. He wasn't as smooth and as accomplished as Brooksy was, but for my money, he was as good a third baseman as any. He also
go ahead.
He also was always in the top 10 guys in all of baseball every year hitting home runs, and never really got the credit for it.
Well, it's good you're giving him credit now. That's important. Vic Davalillo.
Amazing. Simply amazing. He was signed out of the Mexican leagues by Cleveland as a pitcher. He was a very good pitcher, extremely good. However, he had one problem. He was a fantastic hitter. You didn't strike him out very much. He could hit the long ball as well as he's going to make contact one way or another. And fast, he was the fastest player Cleveland ever had in its organization. And as you know from his record, he could steal on a dime. And he covered that outfield like you couldn't believe. He was a big help to the pitcher because he could play so shallow. Because if you hit it over his head, he could go get it. So he could play shallow, which would stop a lot of those line drive base hits. He'd catch them.
Did he ever play shallow enough like Tris Speaker to take a pickoff throw at second?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was a couple times where we had an actual plan that we worked on in spring training, where when a situation arose, we attempted it 2 or 3 times. It didn't work, but we were there. In other words, when a pitcher would turn and throw to second, Vic was there.
Dick Hauser.
Dick Hauser, a very small, short guy, very classy, a genius when it came to baseball, just a class act, was a damn good shortstop, could cover a lot of ground. Obviously not a home run hitter, but he would make contact. Also turned around to become one of your great coaches as well as manager. Just an all-around, to me, intelligent, class act, great ball player.
Early Win.
Early Win, old Burley. He was my roommate when he was trying to win the 300 games. Cleveland got him back from Chicago when he had 299 wins. And for 6 or 7 games, Cleveland signed him to keep him there to try and get his 300th win. And he pitched exceptional for 6 or 7 games. And then finally, the one game that he did win his 300th game was not really one of his best. But it was a rare occasion where Cleveland scored enough runs where he was able to get his 300th win. But for 5, 6, 7 games before that, he pitched exceptional. And, of course, Cleveland, we had difficulty trying to get, any runs.
Did he tell you much about the 48 and 54 Indians?
Yeah, he talked a lot about them. He would be considered one of your mean pitchers. I mean, he'd knock his mother down, as he would say in interviews, that he would knock his mother down if it meant he could win a game, at the plate. And he did knock a lot of players down and then challenge him to come out on the mound. Let's go.
Tommy John.
To me, I believe he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Probably never will, and I'm not sure why. Take a look at his wins and then take a look at other pitchers in the Hall of Fame, and you'll see his stats are far better and quite a few pitchers in the Hall of Fame. In addition, this guy probably was one of the most dedicated human beings I ever met in a game. Remember, he could not pitch for 2 years after the Tommy John surgery, where they took that ligament from his leg and put it in his arm in order for him to be able to pitch again. He could not break a pane of glass if he stood 10 feet from the pane, but he had exceptional control. And I remember he was my roommate one year when Cleveland first got him, and he would want me to teach him how to throw my curveball. And we would sit on the edge of the bed flipping a baseball until he could become natural to get the spin for the curveball that he wound up having, which everybody considered one of the best in baseball. But here's a guy that dedicated himself to get back to baseball. And then eventually, after 2 years of working out, of his discipline day in, day out, without ever giving up, having faith when everybody told him it didn't matter about the operation, that he would never pitch again. And he went on to pitch 18 more years in the major leagues. And there's a guy that statistically he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And why he's not, I don't know.
Yeah, that's an inspirational story, his after the surgery coming back and doing so well. Moving on to 1964, George Strickland. George,
pretty good guy. Played second base for us, by the way, when he was a player. Then obviously he became a manager for us there for that 1 year. Pretty good guy, very hard-nosed, old school type of a player. Never said much, a very quiet guy.
Leon Daddy Wags Wagner.
Get your rags at Daddy Wags. He owned a clothing store in Los Angeles for a while, and that was his slogan, get your rags at Daddy Wags. Daddy, by the time he came to Cleveland, he was still a home run hitter, but not like he was in his prime. But he still demanded respect from the opposition, and he got it because they knew he could hit the ball a pretty good distance. I'll never forget the day that Bertie Tebbetts told everybody to make sure they're here half an hour early. He's going to have a team meeting, and it's very important for everybody to show up tomorrow. And lo and behold, at 4 o'clock, the team meeting starts. And about 4:30, Bertie's about halfway through. In walks Leon Wagner, and Bertie goes berserk. And he says, that cost you $500. And Leon tried to talk all he could and said, but I had 500 feet of fishing line out there in Lake Erie. I couldn't lose all that line. And Bertie said, it's $1 a foot.
Okay. Sonny Siebert.
Sonny originally signed as an outfielder, could hit pretty good, was determined he was going to stay in the big leagues, and apparently somebody in the minor leagues had mentioned to him that he really didn't have anything special as a hitter, and that they had an awful lot of hitters at that time, that he might want to think about something else because he had an unbelievable, powerful arm. And so he started working out trying to be a pitcher in the minor leagues and asking everybody questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? This and that, what have you. He made himself a doggone good pitcher in the big leagues. I believe he had 1 or 2 no-hitters, won 20 games a couple of times. Just a real good pitcher.
Our guest has been Sam McDowell, who had a tremendous MLB career, mostly with Cleveland from 61 to 1975, Cleveland Indians, San Francisco Giants, New York Yankees, and Pittsburgh Pirates. And he's got a book coming out next month. Everyone's looking forward to it. The Saga of Sudden Sam, The Rise, Fall, and Redemption of Sam McDowell, coming out March 9th. Mr. Sam McDowell, do you have any final words for our audience tonight?
No, I just enjoyed it, reminiscing, going back over. In fact, I kind of surprised myself and shocked myself being 80 years old. I'm having difficulty trying to remember what I had for breakfast, and yet I can remember a lot of those players and names that you brought up. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's well, that's how it is. These older memories are, when we were younger. We've had more time to think about them, and they're really strong. And that's why I'm so happy to have you on, because anybody who's 60 years and above in Cleveland who loves Sam McDowell and anyone who loves Cleveland Indians history. So I'm so happy that you're on tonight. I hope I can get you on again, and I'm really looking forward to the book that's coming out. You and Marty Gitlin's book.
Yeah, Peter, you were talking about the older people. I told you, I think the last time I was on your show, that during that book signing that I had in Cleveland 2 weeks ago, I was shocked and surprised of how many young people knew my record, knew my stats and everything, and I know they weren't even born when I was pitching, and it just blew my mind.
Well, that gives me hope. That shows that their parents, hopefully, it sounds like their fathers or mothers were told them about you, and I'm so happy to hear that, because we should remember. There should be some sense of history, and so I think that's probably has a lot to do with their love for their fathers, who obviously who still loved you, and your memory of you is very strong. So you'll be always beloved, and that shows you'll be remembered in Cleveland for long into the future. And
well, I hope so.
Our guest has been Mr. Sam McDowell. We'll hopefully have him on again. Next week we're going to have James Donaldson back, former NBA player and mental health advocate. Dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Mr. Sam McDowell.